Radio Newsroom and powered by DemeraraWaves.com.
Good day with your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw. First with the highlights. Vice President Barrow Jagdeo is denying that he takes bribes from Chinese companies through a middleman. Opposition coalition parliamentarian Dr. Nicolette Henry has resigned from the National Assembly, but PNCR leader Aubrey Norton has to wait until April to become opposition leader. In the region, Haiti has cancelled its carnival, and Jamaica is offering hefty cash rewards to get illegal guns off the streets. And you'll be getting your latest international news coming from the BBC.
Advertise with us on News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM for best coverage on programs on motivation, beauty and health, parenting and relationships, knowing your rights, and a variety of enlightening content, and get value for your money. Call our helpful staff today on 223-1056 or 223-1041 today.
Now for the news in detail. Vice President Barrow Jagdeo has rejected claims of kickbacks from Chinese companies through a middleman. He admits that he knows a gentleman whose name is Mr. Su. He says the man is his friend and his tenant. In an interview with the United States headquartered Vice News, admits that he helps people, but he denies that he takes bribes.
So I just heard what you read, and that's totally accurate. I help out as many people as I can. That's totally accurate what you read there. Unbelievably accurate. It's accurate. So I help people out, but it doesn't mean for consideration. It does not mean for bribe, because I believe that we have a mission to help as many people as possible move forward in this country.
After challenging the interviewer to name her source or provide evidence, she named one Mr. Su, to which Mr. Jagdeo admitted.
Su? Oh, Su. My relationship? Nothing. He's a tenant in my place, yeah.
And he's a good friend of yours?
Yes, yes. He is a friend of ours. His father was here from many years ago.
Mm-hmm. I mean, he lives next door to you.
Yes.
You know, he was able to arrange meetings and catch-ups with you at any point in the day. He claims,
as a friend, yeah.
He claims that through his very close relationship with you, that he's able to get any deal done.
Well, I don't know if that's
able to change laws for investors.
But then, which law has been changed for any investor?
Vice President Barrow Jagdeo. A Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC parliamentarian Nicolette Henry has resigned from the National Assembly. She on Monday dispatched her resignation to House Speaker Manzoor Nadir. The resignation letter is dated February 10, 2022, and states that she is resigning with effect from March 31, 2022. Her resignation now means that People's National Congress Reform PNCR leader Aubrey Norton has to wait until April 2022 before he can replace Dr. Henry as a parliamentarian. Once he enters the House, he will be subsequently voted in by fellow APNU plus AFC parliamentarians as opposition leader. APNU plus AFC's Joseph Harmon has already resigned as opposition leader several weeks after the PNCR's Central Executive Committee had decided that Mr. Norton should become opposition leader. Mr. Harmon suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of Mr. Norton for the PNCR's leadership at their party's internal elections back in December 2021. Unlike the last elections, Mr. Harmon was not co-opted to sit on his party's executive. Fewer Guyanese are getting infected with COVID-19 and the number of active cases is dropping rapidly. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says that laboratories have recorded 35 new cases within the past 24 hours and the number of active cases has dropped to just under 5,500.
Over the last 24 hours, we've had about 37 cases, and right now we have 5,495 active cases across the country. This would be a significant drop from what we would have seen, let's say, about 2 weeks ago, when we were at its peak with about 13 to 14,000 cases. So we've seen a declining trend of new cases. And I guess by the end of the week, we will see this 5,495 drop further as less people are getting infected and more people are getting discharged.
However, the health minister is appealing to Guyanese to obey the COVID measures such as the social distancing, hand washing, and sanitization and the enforcement of measures by businesses.
I really want to appeal to persons to get them to understand the importance of this because we are still not out of the pandemic. Omicron is still here with us and it can still infect people and we can still have severe infections where people are hospitalized and you can also see some of those persons dying, especially those who have not been vaccinated and those with comorbidities and older and so forth. So, I think a lot of people have grown complacent, but that complacency can be fatal, especially if you're unvaccinated.
Official figures also show that to date, 99 COVID-positive persons are hospitalized and 69 of them are at Ocean View Hospital. There, 17 of them are seriously sick and are receiving intensive care. Meanwhile, since the start of the pandemic in 2020, there have been 7,831 pediatric cases, of which 55 had been hospitalized and 17 have died. If you need a replacement national identification card, then the Guyana Elections Commission can get you one. Minister of Governance Guilty Shero told the consideration of estimates for the 2022 national budget that more than $237 million have been allocated for the production of identification cards and other materials.
But, Mr. Speaker, the allocation under print and non-print materials of $237,760 include the printing of sensitive election materials, tally sheets, etc., and new and national ID cards. That's an ongoing process, sir. There is nothing to prevent the GCOM from making national ID cards available to Guyanese now.
Minister of Governance and Parliamentary Affairs, Guilty Shero. The Guyana Elections Commission has begun internal work to prepare for local government elections later this year. Already, Local Government Minister Nigel Dharamlal has said that the polls for the towns and neighborhood councils will be held this year. Responding to questions from opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC parliamentarian David Patterson, Minister of Governance Guilty Shero said that GCOM's Secretariat is crafting a local government election plan to be taken to the 7-member commission.
Mr. Chair, can I assume that the Honourable Minister is saying that the GCOM has not decided or made a preliminary estimate of which quarter local government elections shall be held?
GCOM has stated that they're preparing a roadmap which they will go to the Commission, and the Commission will make the determination of when they would be ready to commence, and obviously then inform the President of their readiness.
Minister of Governance Gilty Shearer. Local government elections should have been held last year, but the Commission had been very busy trying to remove Keith Lowenfield, Roxanne Myers, and Claremont Mingo. They have been implicated in alleged electoral fraud and are before the court. A clothes vendor was shot dead early yesterday morning in Georgetown. Police have identified the victim as a 24-year-old Carlos Deshawn Waite of Lot 2 North Street, Working Rust, Georgetown. He was gunned down at about 4 a.m. at Leopold Street between Breda and Smith Streets. According to police investigators, the now dead man and several friends were consuming alcohol early in the night in Charlestown, after which Waite then told them he was heading to a popular bar and left. Police say that Waite showed up at a popular bar on Breda Street in the company of an identifiable male who became involved in an argument with several males at the bar. Investigators say the argument caused him to run east on Leopold Street towards Smith Street, with the men giving chase, during which several explosions, suspected to be gunshots, were heard. Waite reportedly ran behind the men, saying they could not shoot that man. Police say the men turned on Waite and an argument ensued, during which 2 more suspected gunshots were heard and Waite fell to the ground. The injured man was picked up and taken to Woodlands Hospital, where he was pronounced dead on arrival. No one has been arrested so far as police investigations continue. A gold miner of Light Street, Georgetown, has been charged with almost 300 grams of marijuana for the possession of trafficking. Chief Magistrate Anne McLennan granted 51-year-old Derek Cox bail in the sum of $100,000. Mr. Cox, whose address is 105 Light Street, Georgetown, has to return to court on March 14. The case has been transferred to Camarang Magistrates Court. Police say that February 4 he was charged with the offense. Investigators had said that following a tip-off, they had gone to Cox's home at Mbamadi, where a search unearthed a quantity of seeds, leaves, and stems suspected to be cannabis sativa stashed in a 5-gallon bucket. Police say he was told of the offense committed, cautioned, and he admitted to the ownership of the narcotics. Now for the news in the region. The Haitian government has cancelled Carnival this year due to the ongoing coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic that has killed 804 people and infected 29,715 others over 2 years. In a statement, the country's Ministry of Culture said that while the pandemic had been a major factor in deciding to cancel the national celebrations, economic issues, as well as overall security in the French-speaking country, had also contributed to the decision. CMC reports that Haiti's Ministry of Culture says the government, because of the economic difficulties faced by the country, has decided this year not to organize a national carnival. However, the ministry says that to support certain town halls who wish to offer their community carnival festivities by evaluating the health and security risks. Haitian Carnival, known as Carnival, is a celebration held over several weeks each year leading up to Mardi Gras. Thousands of students across Trinidad and Tobago from Forms 1 to 3 as well as the Standard 5 pupils flocked into their physical classrooms for the first time in almost 2 years. The United Nations Children's Fund has called on governments around the world to take all necessary steps to get students back to school to stem the problem of learning loss.
Thousands of students across the country from Forms 1 to 3 as well as Standard 5 pupils flocked into their physical classrooms for the first time in almost 2 years. One sibling in Port of Spain says his younger brother and sister had differing reactions to the measure.
My brother is excited about it because Cape is coming up, so he's getting ready for Cape. My sister, on the other hand, I don't know how she feels. She's just kind of neutral to it because she still is she is very germophobic, so she's very frightened and concerned.
And as physical school restarts, only a few maxi-taxi operators came out to transport school children to school today. President of the maxi-taxi concessionaires, Rodney Ramlogan, says many of them remembered not being paid for their work last year, combined with late payments before that.
So this morning, maybe a handful of drivers came out to give it a shot because some of the guys have learned to survive for the past 2 years without this maxi work, as well as some have them and they want to see if they could make a living. But the bottom lines remain that the payment is going to be a problem because the PTSC keep passing the blame on to the Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education keeps passing on the blame to the PTSC. So as of this morning, I wish the guys luck.
Mr. Ramlogan says that a realistic perspective needs to be taken of the situation, including the requirements of the times.
I have gotten the drivers to understand, and we have to understand as well. The government need to be honest to themselves as well as us. Our understanding is that all government runs a social program, which is a school feeding, school transport, food card, hamper, drive, gate, whatever it is. And this government today honestly cannot afford this anymore, this social service. We need to sit down and understand that this is the end of this.
The Maxi Taxi School Association president says that the drivers who have chosen to take up the gauntlet and try once again do so with great trepidation. He says because he and other members are aware that they are not at the top of the barrel when it comes to payments for their work, they will continue to move away from this field. The Trinidad and Tobago Unified Teachers Association, that's TUTA, believes that not enough consultation between them and the ministry was done before the return of Forms 1 to 3 to physical school. Speaking on TTT's Now Morning show, First Vice President of TUTA, Marlon Seal, said many of their suggestions were not implemented.
We are asking the ministry, let us have a real consultation about these matters. Let us meet so that we can have a meeting of ideas, meeting of minds, and even in an imperfect situation, let us together find a way forward.
He said the public service follows the 6 feet distancing rule and the same should apply to schools.
They are suggesting for the only part of the CDC recommendations where they have the 3 feet in schools, that's the only part they took out. That level of hypocrisy we cannot accept, because if we are going with CDC recommendations, then we should also go with the 5-day turnaround time. Then we should.
More from the region. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness has announced a new Get Every Illegal Gun campaign with a reward system being put in place, allowing for as much as $3,200. CMC reports that Mr. Holness says that the initiative is part of his administration's fight against crime and that as much as $1,600 and $3,200 will be paid for illegal weapons. The Prime Minister said, urging the public to call the relevant authorities and report any instances of illegal guns, as well as the location of gunmen. Last week, the government announced plans for launching the new incentive-based campaign to reward people offering information leading to the seizure of illegal guns and the arrest and charge of wanted people. The National Crime Prevention Fund, which operates Crime Stop, already pays for tips, but the National Security Council last week agreed on the development of another robust national campaign against illegal guns and gangs. In 2019, Crime Stop received 1,020 tips and 679 in 2020, which resulted in total payments of almost $90,000. The announcement by the Jamaican Prime Minister came less than 24 hours after law enforcement authorities seized 13 guns, including 10 high-powered rifles, during an operation. The police said 2 submachine guns and a pistol were also found, and that a man was killed during the operations. Jamaica recorded 1,463 murders last year and has registered more than 112 murders so far this year. And lastly, in the region, Prime Minister Gaston Brown has told the opposition United Progressive Party that his son's wealth is not his own. Antigua Newsroom reports that Mr. Brown says the opposition is constantly making his success as a businessman an issue on the political campaign. He says that several years ago he had purchased 4 acres of land while he had been in opposition, constructed a mall, and transferred the property to his son. Part of the building is being rented to the government. However, the Antigua and Barbuda Prime Minister says nothing is wrong with his son earning government money from the property.
And if my son get a little $30,000-$40,000 a month, is that a problem? All kind of people rent to government, all kind of people have contracts with government. I mean, the government rents about, $50-something million between the public, the central government and statutory organizations pay out nearly $50 million a month in rent. And if they're renting a property for my son and he gets $30,000-$40,000 a month, what is so valuable about that?
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown. Now for your international news coming from the BBC.
With the BBC News, hello. The French President Emmanuel Macron says he believes there are concrete, practical solutions to restore security on the European continent in the face of tensions between Russia and the West over Ukraine. He was speaking after talks with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, a day after he met President Putin in Moscow. James Waterhouse in Kiev said Mr. Macron recalled 2013 as a seminal year for Ukraine.
The country took a big step towards Europe then, and President Macron said the country has not been the same since, and there was no going back, which is quite a statement to make. He said he can't stop NATO's open door policy, but he sees the breakthrough being through these Minsk agreements, this ceasefire deal for these occupied territories in the east of Ukraine by Russian-backed militants. Both Russia and Ukraine have accused each other of not honouring it. The requirements were for Russia to scale back heavy weapons and for Ukraine to install local elections and to change its law for more devolved powers to that area. That's not palatable for President Zelensky's government. That, they say, would give Russia a direct hand into Ukrainian politics.
Former Pope Benedict has acknowledged errors in the handling of child abuse cases during his time as the Archbishop of Munich. Jenny Hill reports from Berlin.
Last month, German lawyers published a report that revealed the historic sexual abuse of hundreds of children at the hands of priests working in the German Diocese of Munich. Pope Benedict XVI was the Archbishop there in the late 1970s and early 80s, and according to the report's authors, failed to act in 4 cases of child sex abuse. Today, the former Pope admitted that errors were made and asked for the forgiveness of all victims of abuse within the Catholic Church. But he failed to address claims that he'd mishandled the cases and said it was deeply hurtful that the inquiry had accused him of lying to investigators. Benedict, who is now 94 years old and in frail health, said he would soon face the final judge of his life.
The authorities in the southern Indian state of Karnataka have closed all high schools and colleges for 3 days after protests against female Muslim students wearing the hijab. And Barasan Etirajan reports.
Tensions have escalated since a few colleges in India's Karnataka state banned Islamic headscarves inside classrooms, saying it was against the uniform rules. Muslim women say they have been attending classes for years wearing their hijabs, and it's part of the religious faith. Protests have turned violent in some parts of the state. A video on social media showed a group of students replacing India's national flag inside a school campus with a Hindu religious flag. Several social media users have criticized the state authorities for not tackling the situation much earlier.
This is the World News from the BBC. Indian officials say an avalanche has killed 7 soldiers in the northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh, bordering China. Their bodies were recovered from the high-altitude site in the Kameng region. India has intensified patrols in the eastern Himalayas after several border standoffs with China in recent years. The Polish government says it will use all legal means to prevent the European Commission from deducting millions of dollars from its funds for fines imposed by the bloc's top court over a mining dispute. Poland had failed to implement an interim court order to suspend mining at a vast open-pit coal mine near the Czech border. The Czechs had complained that it had lowered water levels. An animal-loving Indonesian man has finally freed a saltwater crocodile that spent 6 years with a motorbike tyre wedged round its neck. Here's Celia Hatton.
For years, residents living along Indonesia's Palu River had known about the crocodile's predicament. A sturdy rubber tire had encircled its neck when it was small, and since then it had tightened around the 4-metre-long reptile. One Australian crocodile wrangler had already tried and failed to free the croc, and locals worried the animal would choke as it grew bigger. A bird seller named Tili eventually came to the rescue. Using live chickens to lure the crocodile into a trap, he then used a saw to cut off the tire. Smiling, he posed for a photo with the liberated crocodile before allowing it to swim away, finally unburdened.
The Power of the Dog, a dark western from the New Zealand director Jane Campion, leads the field with 12 Oscar nominations, including Best Picture. Also in the running for top prize at next month's Academy Awards are the sci-fi epic Dune, which scored 10 nominations, and Belfast, a drama about a family living amid conflict in Northern Ireland in the 1960s. Steven Spielberg is vying for Best Director for West Side Story. BBC News.
And that was your international news coming from the BBC. Here now is a recap of the highlights. Vice President Baro Jagdeo is denying that he takes bribes from Chinese companies through a middleman. Opposition coalition parliamentarian Dr. Nicolette Henry has resigned from the National Assembly, but PNCR leader Aubrey Norton has to wait until April to become opposition leader. And in the region, Haiti has cancelled its carnival, and Jamaica is offering hefty cash rewards to get illegal guns off the streets. And you had your latest international news coming from the BBC. And that was your major newscast. I am Jessica Daw.
This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio Newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.